The death certificate for Queen Elizabeth II has been released. Held by the National Records of Scotland, the document confirms that she died of old age at 3:10 in the afternoon. Let's hear more about this from our reporter, or correspondent, should I give him his correct title, Dan Johnson.
In essence, this is a public document. It's the same sort of document that would be created when anybody is born, married or dies. So in many ways, this is the monarch just following the administrative process that every family has to go through in this situation. Because she died in Scotland, this record of the death has been held by the National Records of Scotland, and they have released an extract of the entry in the Register of Deaths. So it tells us that the death was registered in Aberdeenshire, that Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor died on the 8th of September 2022. Perhaps the most interesting detail here is that it tells us that the Queen died at 3:10 that afternoon. And if we go back to the sequence of events that day, we know there was a statement at around 12:30 saying that she was unwell, that she was under medical supervision. We know that then Prince Charles and Princess Anne were at Balmoral Castle, which is where she died, according to the certificate. They were there at that time, but we know that at 3 o'clock, the rest of her family were still travelling to be with her. So it does seem that this confirms that the Queen sadly died without her grandchildren and the rest of her children being at her side. And it tells us the cause of death was old age, but no more detail than that.
And Princess Anne is mentioned on the document as well.
Yes, it's Princess Anne who's registered this death, the Queen's daughter. So she's had to go to the Register Office and fill in this form, complete those details in the way that any other grieving, bereaved family would have to do in those moments after death. It's a legal requirement that the death is registered within a week. Now, there's a curious difference here. Apparently, if the Queen had died in England, the Registration Act wouldn't have applied to her because she's the monarch. But that was never enacted in Scotland, so we wouldn't have seen this had the Queen died in England, most likely. So we're getting a little bit more of an insight into the circumstances around the Queen's death that day and the sorts of processes that the royal family has had to go through afterwards. Her doctor is named here, and a few other officials who've been involved in this process. It confirms her husband's details. It gives her father and mother's details, that her father was King George VI deceased. It's spectacular details of monarchy, but on the everyday form that everyone will have seen whenever anyone's died.
I think that for me is what makes it sort of really quite touching, Dan, is that, you know, this is the Queen and all of those members of the royal family from the past and present, and yet it's the same bit of paperwork that everybody has to fill in.
Absolutely, yeah. What a leveller. I mean, there's been so much reflection of the Queen's life and her amazing service, but in essence, in administrative terms, it comes down to the same sheet of paper that anyone would have.